Rivets are a common type of fastener for leather working. They are often made of brass, copper, steel, or aluminum. They are used for securing a wide range of materials to leather, including denim, canvas, and leather itself. Rivets can be found in various sizes ranging from around 5 millimeters to 19 millimeters. That's around 0.2 to 0.75 inches long. At their core, rivets are metal studs that are secured on both ends of a piece of leather to help lock multiple layers of material together. They're an invaluable tool in the leathercrafter's kit and a really fun addition to the shop. There's so many different types available. In leatherworking, presentation and aesthetics are just as important as being able to fasten and secure materials. The magic of the rivet is that it can play both parts simultaneously. They're available in a variety of colors and materials, and they can be used to call attention to certain details or be completely hidden from view, just adding extra support and structural integrity to a joint that is commonly under tension, such as in a pocket corner or a seam of a bag. Using compression to lock a small cap or rivet called a burr in place can effectively offer a nearly unparalleled level of structural support in places of higher tension. So let's take a look at a few of the common types of rivets that are available. The first one that we have is called a double cap rivet. And if you see, this sample has all three that we're going to talk about on it. And the one we're looking at now is the double cap. So it's got a cap on one side, and then on the back has a cap on the other. So essentially it's going to look the same either way you're looking at it. This is going to be good for rivets that are going to be exposed visually on both sides of your project. And the double cap rivet is made up of these two parts, hence the name double cap. So the first is going to be this, which has a cap attached to the stem, and it looks like that. There's going to be different sizes of the cap itself, and so on one side is going to be the cap side that will be facing outwards, and on the other we have where it will receive the post. So we could see here, there's the cap on either side, and then it's resting right in there over the post. And so when we're securing this, we're just going to be further positioning that cap over the post, and then that'll be what binds the leather together. So they'll typically come in a set like this. Now this is generally a very basic set. There are going to be higher quality rivets out there, higher quality setters. So when you decide on what you want to use for your project, it's definitely most often worth the investment to get some higher quality hardware, because that will be a really standout part of the project and be with it for the entire time that project is in use. So for a little bit extra cost up front, you can get some really nice looking hardware. There's a few great shops online for that. For this demonstration, I wanted to show you what you may come across most commonly and to start from there. So this will likely come with a base to it, and that base is essentially going to be used to put in your rivet, and then we're going to layer the material together because we're trying to join the two pieces, correct? So we're going to put our first piece down, and then we're going to put our second piece over that we're looking to join. Now you can see that rivet's still pushing through, which should be enough to catch the cap. I'll put the cap on, secure it in there. We kind of have a little bit of a sandwich. And with the cap on, it's already connected. It's not going to fall out. So typically what we'll do next is we will find our striking surface. Here I'm going to use a rubber surface, and then we're going to sandwich our, basically like this, on our table. So we're going to have our surface that's going to absorb the shock. Then we're going to have our base here that's going to hold the rivet. And then we're going to have our rivet sandwich, if you will, which is going to be our material 1, material 2, and then the cap. So we put that down, and then we take a rivet setter from our tool set. Now something to be very careful of here is some of the less expensive sets are going to have less finely machined tools. So if you look, this one actually has a bit of a burr right in the middle. And this one's going to be a little smoother. And this is where getting higher quality tools is going to lead to vastly better results, even if it's not that much more expensive than these very basic sets. and that's going to impact you just like this. Here's our sample again. If you could see here, this has a dent in the middle, and that's because our setter here, which was intended for this very job, has that burr in the middle, which is indicative of lower quality tools, which are going to give you less than stellar results. Whereas in this example, which we'll get to shortly, we use the different setter, and that gives you, you guessed it, a much smoother top. So those are the things to keep an eye out for, especially with like lower quality tools, which is why you typically want to go a little bit higher. So now that we've got that touched on, we're going to choose our setter. We're going to rest it on top, and then we are going to take a maul. You could use a maul, a mallet, or a plastic ended hammer. We're basically just going to tap it and set our rivet. All right, and once that is done, our rivet should now be more secured in there. And you see, it's going to move around a lot less. And part of the process is choosing the right rivet for the thickness of the materials you're joining. For example, if we were going to join this, we wouldn't want to use necessarily this type of a rivet, which is going to be much too thick. There's going to be a lot sticking up, which is going to leave room between our rivet and the material. Likewise, if we were to choose a rivet that is maybe like this, which is a little too short potentially, you're not going to be able to get a secure cap on top, and you may have a very loose connection that likely will fall off. So a lot about rivet setting is choosing the right height of the rivet to match your material. And additionally, as in, here are two examples. We've got different cap sizes, different heights. Let me put this on here. So here we've got two examples of different cap heights and sizes, and we'll dive more into this in just a minute. So that's how you set a rivet. It's really easy, and with a little bit of practice, it'll become just like you've been doing it for a long time. So that was double cap rivets. Next, we have something called a single cap rivet. And they differ in that whereas before we had a cap on both ends, and on this type, we're going to have a cap on one end and the other cap is going to be open. So whereas previously our double cap rivets look like this, with a cap on one end and a cap on the other, our double cap variety is going to have an open end, and then we'll also have a cap that goes on that open end. And for example, here's how it would look before being secured to leather. We have our open end there, and we have our cap end there. And would set it in a very similar way to the first one. This is going to have a more unique base, whereas the first base for our double cap was rounded on the bottom. Here, we're going to have a little bit of a cone in the base, and that's there to receive the open base and keep that more securely in place. Whereas our double cap had just the round base because the cap shape there is round. And the end result of our single cap rivet, which looks like this when it's set, is going to look just like this on the top. So the appearance of single cap and double cap on the outside are essentially going to be the same, depending on the material choice you have, but functionally and aesthetically, they'll look the same. They will look different on the backside. Here is our single cap, here is our double cap. In that essence, you're going to have the cap view on both, and here you're just going to have the single cap. So depending on where you're using it on your leather good and what you want that to look like, that'll help guide your choice. If you're not going to see the backside too much, you may want to go single cap. If you are, you may like double, or you may like the thinner profile of the single cap and go with that. Rivets. Are they totally tubular? I hope so, because if not, it's going to look bad. And here's what they are. They are rivets. So they have a cap on one end and then are essentially a tube, hollow tube in the middle, and no cap on the other. So it's almost like half a rivet. How's that going to work? And what we do is it'll essentially end up looking like this. And so this original rivet here will go up and in, and then on the back side, we're going to use a special tool that splits this area down and pushes it to then make it meet the material below it. And that tool is called a peening tool. And it's essentially a specialized tool for the tubular rivets. And if we look on the end, it has those little ridges cut out. And so when you're setting a rivet like this, we're going to have a base as well. We're going to rest that rivet in the base. And then this peening tool is going to line up right in the middle of that rivet. And then as that rivet is struck, that peening tool will begin to split the tube apart, and then the pressure that's applied will drive it further and further down until this split part rests against the leather. So essentially, that's going to create a lip where then the rivet will not be able to pull back through the material. So it's pretty interesting. It only requires that material itself. It can be a little trickier to set and require a little more force than the other types of rivets, simply because we are deforming this metal intentionally as part of the process. So that'll something to keep in mind. But they're also available in a variety of shapes and colors too, and is what that looks like. So those are going to be our three main types of rivets. We're going to have our finished ones here, and then here we've got our single cap, our double cap, and our tubular. Let's talk rivet materials. So the most popular ones we're going to find are going to be brass, steel, and copper. Now bear in mind, on less expensive rivet sets, you're likely not going to actually get brass, steel, and copper. It's going to be, gold color, silver color, and copper color. They may just be plated with something. If you get higher quality rivets, they should be that material throughout. Brass is easily the most common, and the brass or brass coated ones help because of brass's durability and inability to oxidize or rust like copper and steel are known to do. Steel does have a tendency to rust, though it's a strong, high tensile strength material, and it's a great option for leather goods that will stay dry most of the time. And copper rivets are a staple in any saddle and tack shop. They're frequently used for bags and apparel making to secure corners where multiple layers of leather meet. Copper rivets are also favored by leather crafters for securing handles and shoulder straps due to how much stress that those points take over their lifetime. You could also get nickel and aluminum. Nickel are going to be shiny like polished steel or chrome. Nickel plating is also very common over brass hardware and provides a silver steel aesthetic to the project while avoiding the rusty pitfalls of actually using steel. And then we've got aluminum. Aluminum pop rivets can be used. It's another type of rivets that's very rarely used in leathercraft, but aluminum can be used in making repairs or gaining access to the opposite side of leather may not be an option. They're commonly referred to as blind rivets because of how they're installed. And now let's look at sizes. When trying to decide what length of rivet to use, especially when it comes to single or double cap, a good rule of thumb is to have around 1/8 of an inch or around 3 millimeters of post protruding from the leather so that the cap can be installed and pressed onto the post properly. So that's what we're looking at in terms of the length above the leather. So aim for around 1/8 of an inch. Because then when we add our cap on top, got this one already over here, this cap will actually secure your material and not be loose, kind of floating up and down. When looking at cap size, this is the measurement of across the top of the rivet cap, basically the diameter. Usually you want that to match the base size, and that way you've got a matching base and cap. You can mix them, but in general you want to keep them consistent for both strength and aesthetics. The post size, this is the measurement that's taken from the end of the rivet to the inside bottom cap of the post. It's going to be essentially from here to here. It's going to be your post length, and it's pretty self-explanatory when you look at the rivet itself. That's going to be your post length. And so here are a few common sizes to keep in mind that you could use as a guideline if you're choosing these for the first time or looking to find some for your next project. A 6mm post type is good for leather up to about 7 ounces. This will start to include some thinner straps and belts and projects with a couple of thin layers. So 6mm is usually the shortest you're going to find in a single or double cap. 7mm is going to be good for weights up to around 10 ounces of leather. It can be secured pretty well. These projects might include bag handles, tool keepers, knife sheaths, thicker wallets, and things like that. 8mm post length can be great for single double cap rivets. They're commonly used for leather weights up to around 12 ounces. This is near the top end of belt making, even for the thickest of multi-layered belts. 9mm is going to be good for use with 15 ounce and thicker leather. We're getting into really heavy stuff now. It's more like saddle and tack making territory at this point. And then really getting 10mm and above, you're going to be using for heavy belt blanks, holster making, and anything that's going to be a very thick, durable leather and project. 12mm is probably the longest you're going to find for most single double cap rivets, and probably the longest post length for the solid copper rivets. So that is a look and probably a bit of a deep dive into the world of leather rivets. Realistically, you're probably going to be working most often with the single and double cap varieties. They're going to cover most needs and have a huge range of options. Like if you think about it, you get a few post types of a few finishes. You may have 6, 8, 10, 12 sets of rivet styles in your shop, and it can accumulate fast. So you'll probably find a few go-to ones that you really like. But with most things, experiment. Find out which works well with your style, how you like to set them. These could be set manually. You could also buy machines that have pre-configured bases for that particular brand of rivet, and basically chucks that you could set that rivet in. So you're not even going to be using something manual, like this. You're going to be putting it into the machine, the bottom part, top part, and then pulling out a lever to basically, press that rivet right into place using that machine. So as you go up in quality, you're going to find options that are going to be more reliable, more consistent, and give you even better results. So with that, explore, and that is a look into the world of leatherworking rivets. If you have questions, let us know. If you have experience or other things to share, would love to learn with you. And there you have it. Until next time.